Now we're going to go over something that's probably the most complicated, most challenging subject of sales management vis-a-vis being an owner or a company, which is deciding the business Jenga rules of commissions. If you've never done a commission plan before, consider yourself lucky. For one, it's the most complicated, stressful, nerve-wracking kind of thing you can ever come up with, because there's always this one, what about this, what about that? There's always something that's never going to quite sit right. And you're balancing three different parties' interests. You're balancing yours, you being the company, two, the reps, and then third, the client. I've been in personal situations where I've asked a rep, that product that you spec'd out for the client really wasn't the best one. Why did you do that? And invariably, commissions played a role in that process, right? And that's not what you want to have your business best interest decided by, is your commission plan. You want a client relationship for a long time, and a commission plan shouldn't really be the deciding factor in what they feel about your company. So to define a commission plan, it's basically the rules of engagement between you and the rep that decide how much they're going to get paid, and sort of coincidentally or very much to the point, how they're going to behave. I was told this many, many years ago that reps do exactly what you're going to pay them to do. So they go through and they figure out the rules and the ramifications of your comp plan, and they put together their behavior that gets the greatest impact for their time spent. It is a very sort of democratic, what you put in, what you get out of system that everybody learns the rules of, and dangerously, the ones that figure it out the best are usually the people that are going to kind of teach the other people. So if there's a loophole, it's going to be found and it's going to be exploited. In this unit, we're going to talk about the various options that you have to develop a comp plan that balances you, them, and your clients, so that everybody can win with a fair return on the money and effort that they put in. I'm not a farmer or a racehorse trainer, but I do know this, that horses are motivated by carrots and sticks. If you watch a racehorse, they're whacking the heck out of the stick trying to get it to go faster. If you're trying to get a horse to go through a barn fence or whatever, you put a carrot in front of them. Sales reps, although they're human, you need to treat them more or less the same way. And they're motivated by carrots and sticks. A commission plan, which calculates their paycheck, is both a carrot and a stick if you do it properly. The carrot's pretty easy to figure out. It's the commission. If you do this, if you get this, you get this. It's quite literally a carrot. It's how they're putting food on their table. That's not that complicated. Now, how much you're going to pay to motivate them is a whole nother story. But the stick is a little bit more complex, and a lot of comp plans in a small business don't really take that into account. It's a pretty large company sort of prospect, which is a quota system. So for example, I have a friend that sells pharmaceutical supplies, and he starts off every year and the company assigns him a quota, let's say $200,000 a month. And if he doesn't do that for a quarter, $600,000 a quarter, for those products it's probably millions, but you get the idea. He doesn't get the commission that he would have gotten, and he might actually have some money subtracted from his paycheck. Very complicated system, but absolutely a stick. So most of you are going to come up with a carrot kind of program, and I'm going to walk you through that, but just keep in mind that there is an opportunity to have a stick, and I have a little mini stick that I'll recommend at the end of this. So I'm going to walk you through the comp plan options that I've seen, and we're going to start with the sort of least complicated, but as you may have seen or will seen in the different unit, not necessarily the least expensive. And that the easiest one to digest for an owner is the no risk, no out-of-pocket commission plan that they have to sell something to get paid. You feel safe, warm, and fuzzy inside because you don't have to pay them to go out there and do this hard work. But we know, going back to what we talked about in terms of the training and stuff, there's certainly an investment. And there's an opportunity cost, because if you're letting them do that to sell your system, somebody else can't. So you still have to pick the right rep, but let's just talk about how much we pay. So in a 100% commission, there's a few pros. I'm going to go through pros and cons of each method. But the pros of a commission is you don't have to pay unless they sell something. Generally speaking, they're limited, if any, overhead or benefits. They're just kind of floating. They do what they want, which leads into the cons, which are you have no control. Legally, I don't think you're even allowed to tell them where to be or when to be there, because then they become sort of an employee. You'll have to obviously check with a real lawyer for that. But you have no control, And sometimes they're like a manufacturer's rep, depending on the industry. They might sell your product and somebody else's product because they might not be able to make enough money on just yours, so they sort of double dip and they sell somebody else's at the same time. So while it feels comfortable, no money out of pocket, you're giving up a significant amount. So that's commission only. That's sort of the risk is really on the rep for the most part, but you're giving up a lot of control and you're taking on a significant amount of risk. The second option is a salary only, and I've seen this work where it's typically in a culture, a company that has a great culture. Everybody's sort of pitching in, they're rowing the boat in the right direction, and they sort of divide the work, and the owner's sort of a socialistic aspect that everybody sort of gets paid from the big pie. That can work if you have the right mixture and you're the type of owner that can sort of drive everybody to their peak performance, and you can kind of live without the financial carrot and stick component. So the pro is you get full control. You can tell them where to be, what to do when they get there, how to act, how to dress, how to do everything. On the flip side is they're not motivated by the money because the money doesn't change. So that's something to take into account. It has almost the exact polar opposites of the commission plan, and you have to look at your crew and your business model and who your customers are. Where I've seen this work the most is when it's sort of an account manager and there's not a hunter farmer or not a hunter rainmaker approach to it. Cindy, you go after this account, you take care of this account, and I'm going to pay you X amount of money. Everybody kind of knows what's going to be made, how much is going to be worth, that kind of deal. If that's your type of business, go for it. The next one is almost a default position, I think, in today's day and age. It's when you start with a salary or an hourly based on a certain number of hours. So you have a solid base to build on, and then you give commissions. It's sort of the compromise system where you get paid for showing up and you get paid for doing well. It works okay. It's better than the first two, in my opinion, but it's not optimal because you have a hard time figuring out the pain point that motivates the person. So if you're bringing in somebody and they say, what do you need to live? And they say $35,000, and you give them a $35,000 base, you've kind of answered your own question. How motivated are they? Right? But if you go, well, I'll give you 20 and you should be able to come up with X amount of sales to make another 20, they feel like they're taking a little bit too much risk. So there's a lot of negotiating that goes back and forth, and frankly, it's hard to sort of find that balance point. You need to live within your budget, your expectations of what somebody's worth, which frankly in today's day and age, what the people think they're worth is a lot more than generally you would. I'm sure you've run across that. So you have salary plus commission. That's the pros and cons are sort of a balance. It's a compromise on everybody's approach. The clients kind of feel it because you're a little bit motivated to close the work. Depending on how driven and competitive the rep is, it can make a big difference too. So if you're going to use that one, go with somebody that has a track record of competition. Find out if they're diving when they're playing ping pong, if they're diving across the basement. That's the type of person that's going to be motivated. And quite frankly, that person doesn't need a huge commission. They could do it for a free lunch. I've seen crazy people motivated by very, very small things. And if you can find them, that's a great thing. So if you have that comp plan and you have a personality profile kind of test, look for competition, look for competitive people. That they'll really absorb, they'll really sort of acclimate to that system. A sister to commissions is a thing called spiffs. And I want to bring this up because there's two kinds of spiffs that I've seen in my life. One of them has worked really well, and that's been the ones that I've controlled. So I say to somebody, we have, let's say we made a mistake and we have 100 extra black task chairs in our warehouse that we ordered for a client. They wanted gray, we ordered black. We have to get rid of 100 black task chairs. So that might need a little bit motivation. So you put, the normal commission plan plus $20 for every black chair that you sell. Those black chairs tend to get sold pretty fast, and the people that are competitive go find a way to do that. They either talk them into black or they talk them out of gray or whatever it is. They make it work. That's what I would call a productive spiff. If you kind of see it in granted it's kind of a bad role model for most people, but a car dealership has this a lot, right? It's the end of the month. So whether it's a specific product or a specific timing, a spiff model can work. The one that I really want to warn you of, and I have just a horrible story to tell you that I was a part of this, is a manufacturer's version of a spiff. So I spent many, many years in what's called contract office furniture, where you sell high-end office cubes, and inside an office cube would typically or potentially be a keyboard tray. So it's the ones that come in and you can slide them and they come out. They might cost $150. When I was doing this, manufacturer's spiffs were rampant. And I, as the person running the dealership, as both the general manager and the sales manager, I was fine with them giving us $15, $20 for the keyboard, but I wanted it to come into our corporate pockets to be delivered however I wanted to deliver it. But that wasn't how the program worked. The program was, you, the rep, sign up for the program, you sell 10 of these things, you get a $150 check, $10.99 check from the manufacturer. I had reps switching these keyboards every 3 months. Their loyalty would completely go out the window from manufacturer A to manufacturer B. And I'd say, why is that? And lo and behold, the spiff from one was 15 to 20. So they were walking in with our good name, our company good name to, XYZ company and saying, we recommend brand A, it's the best. And then 60 days later, they walk into the same company or different company, brand B is the best. And the only thing different was how much money was going into their pocket, right? Forget about how much money we made, forget about what the value or the warranties or whatever else. You need to have control over manufacturer's spiffs if that's a part of your industry. I can't tell you to what exactly to do, but you need to know exactly what's going on. And you'll see it if the reps are picking vendors out of a list of vendors. Who they're motivated to go to and from is probably a result of spiffs if that's in your industry. Just beware. This next one, I'm going to introduce a concept called an activity bonus, and I'm going to do it without a commission just to kind of give you the idea. But this theory is you have a base pay, salary or hourly, and then you pay them for the activities. So in today's world of commerce, it's not nearly as clean cut as it used to be as to who sold what, why they sold it. So we have certain activities that generate sales that you want to encourage. In the businesses that I help personally today, we use email marketing to a great extent. So if I get an email from a client, that's going to greatly increase my chances of our company selling them something that they want down the line, right? So do I want that person to get an email address from you, the suspect? Yeah, absolutely I do. Did they sell anything? Did they allow me to pay them any commission? No, they didn't, but they helped the process. So maybe it's hourly plus an activity. Maybe it's how many emails, how many demos did they do, how many people came into the showroom with their invitations, how many people went to their open house. Whatever it is that sort of motivates people to get longer through the sales funnel, find a way to compensate for that, and you'll find that people do it more. They're more aware of it, they're more cognizant, they're more energetic about it. So monetize the activities to drive the results. This last one is my favorite of all, and you probably wouldn't be that surprised to know that's the most complicated. That's the kind of person I am. That's me. It's the most complicated, it's the hardest to explain, but I believe to be the most productive. And it has three components: the base pay to get them to show up, an activity bonus based on what I want them to do, and then a commission plan when they win. And I take the first two, the base pay and the activity, and I go back to that question that I brought up earlier, which is, how much do you need to make? And they say $35,000. I say, okay, so if I can show you a system which you make $35,000, you're satisfied? Yes, I am. Okay, so we start with, first thing I'm going to do is I'm only going to pay you $25,000 to show up. And then I'm going to pay you $10,000 to do the activities that I want you to do. And you can do these on day one, on day 3,000. It doesn't matter. You don't have to sell. You just have to do the right thing. And in the past, I've used a system where those things were how many calls they made, how many contacts they added to the database, which was proven by an email, and then how many appointments they set, and how many appointments they set for themselves, and how many appointments they went on. So they're setting and then they're going on. But you can come up with whatever system you want. And each one had its own points. Obviously, a call was less than an appointment, but a call led to an email, which led to an appointment. So they all built. And we know that if you go on 5 appointments, you're going to get 1 customer, right? So the commission came at the end of the process, but you got paid to go through it. So I feel that this is the best system because it's not that they show up to get the $35,000. They have to show up and do what they're supposed to do. And this allows some great counseling in the sort of day-to-day management, which is, hey, Susie, hey, Sam, why aren't you hitting your activity? What's going on? Well, I'm afraid to call, or I don't have a list, or I don't know how to ask for an email. I'm uncomfortable asking for an appointment. Whatever it is you're trying to drive, if they're not achieving it, then you have a training moment that you can take advantage of. And essentially, they're giving themselves a pay cut. They've bought onto this at the beginning, but they can control it. They can't make more than the 10, but they can make the 10. If you really want to go crazy, use those same activities to have a spiff kind of system on top of it. But that's my recommended comp plan. So I know that this business Jenga system of a comp plan is very convoluted. I'm sure that that's more complicated than you were hoping for, but it takes into account all of the criteria that you're trying to match up. I have a few other thoughts though on commission in general that I want you to build into your math. And this is math. This is a spreadsheet. If you're a spreadsheeter, this commission planning is for you. That's probably why I like it so much. The few things on commissions, a few notes. One is I would highly recommend a point-for-point system. And by that I mean strictly mathematically, if your commission plan is X and your gross profit dollars are Y, they should be in line. So in the past, I've done a true point-for-point, which is if you sold it for a 25 gross profit, you got 25% of the gross profit. If you want to go down to 12, you'd get 12. So it's a stair step, and you're driving higher margin sales. You have to take into account some exceptions. Maybe it's some national account or whatever, but you get the idea that the inline part of it, the higher margin, which they control. I mean, don't let sales reps fool you. If you don't have a lot of sales experience yourself, you can control the margin just by how well you present the opportunity, how well you present the solution. It's not a fixed thing. As much as people like to think of all these prices are known as commodities, that's not true. The second thing is it's sort of an alternative to the point for point, but it's tier commission. So you might say that they get 8% if it's over 25 margin and 4% if it's under 25 margin. You make up the rules for your business, but that's the idea, that you're trying to drive them to that higher one and you're willing to pay for that. The last one is really complicated. I inherited this system once. I can't say that I endorse it, but those of you that are out there that would like it even more complicated than what I've already suggested, it takes into account an overhead factor. So let's say you sell a product for $100, it costs you $60, you have a factor in there. The place I took over had 8% overhead, so they would add another 8%, and they'd take that out. So it's a logical thing to do. I mean, there's accounting, HR, rent, etc. But I'm not sure that it's the most logical thing to put in front of their commissions. You'll also find that some people take the commissions out of the GP before they calculate the GP. It's up to you, whatever strategy you want. In the next unit, we're going to go over how to explain this to the candidates, because that's really what matters. It can be as complicated or simple as you want, but if they don't understand it and they're not motivated, it's completely backfiring and probably counterproductive. So the bottom line on comp plans is this: make sense out of a system that works for you, can be explained to good candidates who will accept it as the rules of engagement to go about their day-to-day business in a fair, responsible, legal way of doing business. Anything's possible. Some work better than others. I wouldn't recommend that you change it all that often. You know, there might be a deal that kind of you get the better of them and they complain about it, or they get the better of you on one. If you've put the thought in, make sure you get a good base of data to know whether it's working or not. And you can always make some exceptions. A deal comes through that you really need to have and the rep doesn't get anything. I mean, I've done deals where it could have been a $500,000 furniture at 5% gross profit, right? We did it to keep the lights on. We did it to keep the installation crew busy. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense, but to sort of cry me a river to the sales rep and not pay them wasn't fair. So we had to do what was right. So start with a good plan, explain it, execute it consistently over a good period of time, and then test it after that period of time to make sure it works. And if nothing else, get some help from your peers, but I'd be careful because this is an awfully complicated system, and just because they say it's working doesn't mean that it will work for you, and that, frankly, doesn't mean that it works for them, right? It's very complicated. Like I said, it's Jenga, and you never know what's going to happen when you pull out the little block. Good luck.